More and more children are out of school, but parents don't want math learning to stop. They're turning to Mathnasium at Home. Real-time math instruction tailored to your child's exact educational needs. It's the same face-to-face live instruction used in our centers for over 15 years, now on a computer. Your child can keep their math skills sharp, catch up, or soar ahead, from home or anywhere with an internet connection. To learn if Mathnasium at Home is right for your child, visit mathnasium.com/at-home. Mathnasium at Home, changing lives through math.
Hello all, welcome back to the Mathnasium Schoolhouse. I am John, the AVP of Education and Training for Mathnasium, and I, as always, am super excited for another session with you all, and always excited about mental math. So, as if you're kind of new to joining us and Mathnasium Schoolhouse, or new to joining these mental math sessions, certainly don't let it be intimidating. We will focus on mental math strategies, but I will also write things down, and kind of what maybe you should be thinking about in your brain. I'll write it out, and you can take notes and think about it later and practice. And like I said, when we talk about mental math, it's supposed to be exciting and not intimidating. And when you come to Mathnasium, we spend a lot of time focusing on mental math and number sense. And a lot of the strategies we talk about, you also talk about in the center. If you're a Mathnasium student, you know that very well. And when you come to Mathnasium, we put together a really awesome plan for you, and we have instructors that will help you with whatever you need, and and really enjoy doing that. So this is just to give you a little bit of a sense of kind of what we do, and really come check us out and learn more about what we do and how we can help you with your math. And of course, the goal is always to have fun, and math is supposed to be fun, whether you realize it or not. I hope if you keep working with us that you recognize that it is fun, and it's something that we want you to enjoy working on. So today on the mental math stuff, we're going to work on multiplication a little bit, kind of talk about some new mental math strategies related to multiplication, maybe some that we've done before. If you're new, they'll be new to you. But it's always important sometimes to revisit some of these strategies and continue to practice them and think about them again. And you'll start to see that even though we may talk about different types of problems, that some of the strategies that we incorporate are connected to each other, and that's important to recognize as well. So, what do you need to be comfortable with? The concept of doubling, the concept of, let's say, multiplying a number by 10, and then some addition and subtraction there. But again, we'll take it slow and do it in a way that makes sense, as we always do. I had also mentioned the last time we did a session that there are a couple things that I presented that I wanted to revisit with you that when we got back together. So since we are back together, I want to revisit those and talk about them a little bit as well. You have the worksheet that we provided that you can follow along. And then, as always, I will give you kind of an extra practice problem that's similar, and you can practice, so that it's something different for you to look at and give you a chance to practice a little bit. If you're a parent, you can kind of see what it is, to see the problem types, and you can create some extra practice kind of on your own. And I will provide a worksheet after we get done today, and you can practice a little bit more. And like I said, revisit these videos, and I hope that you rewatch them and that you enjoy them. So with all of that said, let's kick it off. And the last time we got together, and like I said, this will be new for you if you weren't with me, we talked about, let me make that black. We talked about a quick way to square a number that ends in 5. Okay. And maybe you're not comfortable with what squaring means, and it's not so bad. Squaring a number means I'm going to take that and multiply it times itself. So I have 35 times 35. They mean the same thing. And we talked about a quick way that if somebody asks you to do that, there's a quick way to figure out what that result is. And if you remember or know what it is, you can always type in the comments and introduce yourself and who you are and where you're from and things like that. We talked about if I want to multiply a number that ends in 5 by itself, the first thing you will always either think, say, or write down will be a 25. And then the goal from here is to figure out what goes in front of that 25. Every time I do this, it will always end in a 25. And if anybody was with me the last time, maybe you want to share what you do next. The way this works is I'm going to take this digit, and it doesn't have to be a single digit. It could be multiple digits. I'm going to take that digit, and then I'm going to add 1 to it and multiply those two things together. Okay? I put that there, and that's my answer. Okay, so if somebody asks you what's 35 squared, or if you want to talk about this later with a friend or a family member, have them throw a number at you that ends in 5 and ask you to square it, and you'll be able to do it. It's actually a really neat little shortcut. Okay? Let's take a look at another one. So let's say 55 squared. So again, that means 55 times itself. So see if you can apply the rule. It's a lot of 5s. Okay. So my result always ends in a 25. The question is, what do I put in front of the 25? Take that 5, I add 1 to it and multiply, and that will go in front, and you get 3,025, and it's as simple as that. Okay. So something that I want you, because the question always is when you see a trick or a shortcut, and I really like those because I love math, and I like when interesting things happen like this. I hope you do too. But the question is, you should always ask or want to know how that works, especially because a lot of these things, these shortcuts, they have an explanation that's not too bad. It's often very simple. Okay, you just have to think about it a little bit. So I'm going to give you, in addition to the worksheet, something for you to think about and practice. Okay, so if I were to ask you what 65 squared is, but more than that, I want you to show how it works. Okay. Now, we talked about how that ends in a 25. I take 6 and 7, multiply them, and I get 4,225. You can do that like that. But I want you to practice, it's a little assignment for you. I want you to show how that works. Okay, and when we get back together the next time, we'll go through it. Okay, so then when you join me again tomorrow, we'll talk about it. I want you to think about, I'm going to put parentheses because sometimes that helps. Okay, kind of group things together. And I want you to think about, can you fill in the blanks for me here and here? Okay. So in other words, if I asked you to write 65 this way, so 10 times some number plus another number is the same as 65. Okay? And I want you to think about that for next time. Okay? And we'll talk about and see how far you can work that out, because then I want you to take those two things and multiply them together. Because ultimately you want to multiply 65 times 65. So I want to take those two things, I want to multiply them together. I want to see what you get. Okay? And if it gets tricky, ask somebody to help you. And you will see what happens and why you always end up with a 25 and why what you put in front, where that comes from when you multiply this out this way. Okay. Awesome. And I'll put that on the worksheet too. Now, last time I also mentioned this concept of short division. So if you weren't with me the last time, okay, let's talk about what that means. And short division is a really cool way to divide something, and really it helps you do it mentally. So let's say I had something like 543 divided by 7. Okay. Now, just because we're talking about mental math doesn't mean that it's not important for you to be able to do it the long division way too. Like, you have to be able to do that. It's important. But then I kind of mentioned there's this short division method that I want you to think about, because that's, when you think of it in terms of short division, that helps you keep everything straight in your head. And what you normally do with long division, you actually do in the short division method, that helps you keep all of this straight mentally. Okay, so the first question is, if I were to do this using long division, what would you do first? And then over here, I'm going to write this the short division way. So the first thing, if I were doing long division, I need to know how many sevens are inside of 54. How many times 7 divides into 54? Okay, so that's 7 times. All right. And then what do you do from there? You multiply back 7 times 7 and you subtract. Okay, so you get 49, 5, okay, 5 left over. And then from there, you bring down to 3. Now, if you're doing it the short division method, you think about the exact same thing. You ask yourself, how many times does 7 divide into 54? 7 times. And you kind of hold that on one side of your brain. And then you ask yourself, okay, 7 times 7 is 49. What's 54 minus 49? And you do that mentally. And you get 5. But instead of putting it here, you write it right here. Okay. So I still have a 7 here. In long division, I bring it down. In short division, I write, it's a little number, a superscript number. And then I ask myself, how many times, in the same way that I do with long division, how many times does 7 divide into 53? Okay. And 7 times. 49. I have 4 left over. So you can think of it as being remainder 4, or 77 and 4/7. Over here, when I'm doing short division, I think of it the exact same way. 7 goes into 53 7 times. Remainder 4. And I'm done. Okay. So the short division method, you do it up here. And if you practice writing this down, then eventually you get to the point where you think about all of these things here in your head. I did the exact same thing over here that I did with long division. I didn't write it all out. I did all the computation in my head. Okay. So that's why when you think about it and you're able to do short division pencil to paper, that's when you're able to do that, then you're able to start doing it mentally, because you can think about all of this math up here and it helps keep you organized. Okay. So practice that short division, practice your division problems using short division if you want to practice your mental math. And then eventually you'll be able to do it. Okay. And we'll keep revisiting that too. There's some practice for you on your worksheet, and practice that. Okay, so let's move into a couple things that are, let's go back to multiplication. And I want to think about 35 times 9, okay? And maybe this is revisiting for some of you, or maybe for some of you this is new. Okay, we've talked a lot about mental math strategies and multiplication. And again, this is okay. You know, we need to be able to do that, but I want to practice being able to do it up here. So one way you can think about your nines facts is 9 is really close to what? And what's nice about multiplying by 10 is multiplying by 10 is a pretty easy thing to do. I take whatever it is I'm trying to multiply and I add a 0 to it. Okay. But the way you have to think about this is I don't want 10 35s. I want 9. So I have one 35 too many, which means I have to take 35 away from this. And this is where that subtraction comes in, thinking about subtraction in your head. So what I really need to know is I need to take 135 away from 350. So in your head, what's 350 minus 35? And you get 315. So 350 minus 35 in your head, you can do 350 minus 30, which is 320, and take 5 more away. You get 315. Okay? So when you see times 9, one way you can think of it is certainly times 10, take 1 away. And what's cool about that is that helps you not only master your 9's facts, like the ones that you would learn in school, but it allows you to multiply anything times 9. Because multiplying times 10 is pretty easy. And then you just have to be really good at subtraction in your head, which is kind of cool. Okay. Let's take a look at another one just like it. So what about 46 times 9? Okay. First step, times 10. But I have 1 too many. So now I need to take a 46 away from 460. So now you just need, in your head, 460 take away 46. So 460 take away 40. It's 420. Take 6 away from that. Hopefully you got 414. Okay. Let's make it a little bit bigger. How about 112 times 9? And this one, well, there's a couple ways. There's always a couple ways to think about it. Okay. So times 10. Now, you might think, a 4-digit number minus a 3-digit number in my head, that's really hard. But what are we trying to, when we multiply something times 10, we really wanted to multiply times 9, I have 1 too many, which means I need to take away a 112. So break it up a little bit. Take away a 100 first. Okay. Okay, so I took care of that part. That's not so bad. Now take away a 10. Okay. Now take away the 2. No, sorry. So now, see how, so again, when you can hold all those things in your head, and that's what takes the practice, then you can start thinking of it that way. Take away the 100, take away the 10, take away the 2. And one of the first mental math sessions that we did together, I mentioned that sometimes when you're doing mental math, working from left to right actually really helps you. So when you normally subtract, you normally go this way. And you have to be able to do that. But I did it from left to right because that's also helpful. Okay. Now, you may have found it easier. Let me erase some of this stuff. You may have found it easier to multiply that by 9 and that by 9 first. So like 110 times 9 is 990, and then I just have to add in that 2 times 9 I haven't dealt with, which is 18. And what do you think 990 minus 18 is? I mean, sorry, plus 18. 1008. And that's where being a really great problem solver comes in. And that's when we talk about mental math, that even though we may talk about one way, you may look at that problem and think that makes more sense to me. And if you can do this multiple ways, then all of a sudden you start to find the ways that make the most sense to you. And then when you're in school and you practice your problem solving, you look at a problem and you can figure it out because you know a lot of different ways to start it. And it all comes back to really thinking about math this way. Okay. And when you come to Mathnasium, we spend a lot of time talking about problem solving and different ways to look at problems because that really helps you. Okay. Awesome. What else do we got? Let's talk about, okay, so let's talk about this. I want to see if in the comments, if we talked about times 9 as being times 10, take 1 away, then how can we look at 11s? So we can think of times 11 as being times 10 and add 1. Because some of you may think that multiplication is really hard and memorizing your multiplication facts, and 11s have kind of a nice, cool little trick to them. And most of them are pretty easy to memorize. Maybe some of them are kind of hard, especially as they get to be into double digits. But you may not think that when you look at 27 times 11 that I don't know if I'd be able to do that mentally, but you can. So if I thought of times 9 as being times 10, take 1 away, then I think of times 11 as being times 10 and add 1. Okay, so 27 times 10, 27 add a 0. And then all I need to do is add a 27 to that. And 297. So think, 27 times 10 first is 270. Add a 27 to that. And as long as you can do the 270 times 27, you're in good shape. Okay. Something to practice. And a parent, when you're standing around just looking for math stuff to talk about, ask your child what's 16 times 11 and talk about that rule. If they watched with you today, or just ask your child. Well, 16 times 11, something outside normal multiplication facts, and see what they do. Awesome. Let's do another one, another practice one. Let's do 46 times 11. Times 10. But I really need 11 of them. I need 11 46s, which means I need to add a 46. Volume 6. It's not so bad. And again, maybe you can't do it all in your head right off the bat. So then start writing stuff like that down. Maybe the 460 plus 46 is hard. So think about what's 460 plus 40. That has a nice friendly number. It's 500. Add 6 more. Awesome. Okay. Let's talk about something a little bit different now. Let's talk about how to multiply something by 20. So kind of related to what we've been doing. There's a couple different ways to look at it. And using the fact that we know multiplying something by 10 is not so bad. Let's think of this as being 13 times 10. Okay. So when I want to multiply something by 20, there's a couple ways I can approach it. Either I can multiply it times 10 first, and then double that, you get 260. Or some of you may say, when I multiply something by 20, I can double that first and then multiply that times 10. And that works too. So whichever way you're more comfortable with, it works. When I see times 20, I think of one of two things. Either I double that number and add a zero, or add a zero and double it. In either way, that works. Let's try another. So let's do 28 times 20. And this is why it's so important for you to practice your doubles and division, your halves, because there's a lot of things you can do with doubling and halving. So let's try this one and see whichever way makes the most sense. What way makes the most sense to you? So either add a zero and double it, or double it and add a zero. So first way we talked about, when I multiply something times 20, I can add a zero, which I'm multiplying by 10 first, and then I'm going to double that. And you may say, well, 280 is really hard to double. Well, then the nice thing is there's a cool other way to do it, which is maybe double something that's a little bit easier, 28, and then add a zero. In either case. And again, we're doing 2-digit by 2-digit, but if I gave you a 4-digit number, do the same thing. Times 20. Wonderful. I have two more for us to do. Okay, I'm going to give you enough to practice until we meet again. Let's talk about this. So let's say 14 times 16. So we talked about, if you've been with me before, we've talked about when I want to multiply something by, let's take it back a step. Let's say I wanted to multiply something times 4. There's a few ways you can do this, but one way we like to think about it is I'm going to take this and I'm going to double it. And I'm going to double it again. Okay. We talk a lot about doubles, right? So multiplying something by 4 is the exact same as doubling it and doubling it again. Okay. Well, so then let me ask you this. If I wanted you to multiply 14 times 8, what do you think multiplying something times 8 is the same as? If times 4 was doubling it and doubling it again, then times 8 would be double, 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 and double one last time. You get 112. Okay. So then, given all of that, if I want to multiply something times 16, as long as my doubles are good, it's not so bad. Okay. Now I'm going to show you a different way to do this particular problem in a moment. Well, I'm not going to write them all out again. But all I really need to do when I multiply something times 16 is to, well, in this case, I would take whatever times 8 is, I'm going to double it again. I get 224. Okay, so as long as you can continue to double, see now the cool thing is you also know, let's say, what times 32 means. I double it one more time. So as long as your doubles are good, then you can do these kind of huge things all in your head, as long as your doubles are good. And that's something for you to practice too. So if you're thinking about some mental math things, like start with a number and double it, and double it, and double it, and double it, and see how high you can go. Or if you're a parent, or you want to look for something cool to do with your kids, have your child ask them, okay, take 8 and double it for me, and keep having them double it, see how high they can go. That's how you kind of stretch their brain. And then you can give them a number and see how far they can have it. There's little things for you to practice at home. All right, last one. This one's a little bit different, and it's very similar to the one we just did. We can think about the one we just did in a very similar way. Now, I want to ask you, what do you notice about 17 and 23? Is there anything that you could notice about those two numbers? When I look at those two numbers, one thing that I think about is that 20 is exactly in the middle. And why would I think about that? Well, because 20 is kind of, the more you practice multiplication, you think 20 is a pretty friendly number. So we're looking for friendly numbers, and we know 20 is right halfway in between. The way this works is, I find that number, if they're evenly spaced apart, so 17 and 23 are 3 away from 20. I'm going to take 20, I'm going to multiply 20 times itself. Okay, and I get 400. That's why I kind of look for those friendly numbers. Now my next question is, how far apart are 17 and 20, or 20 and 23? They're both the same distance from 20. They're 3 apart. I take 3 and multiply it times itself, and I subtract it from 400. And I get 391. Okay, and that always works too. And I'll give you another example in your follow-up worksheet for you to practice that. So you find that number in between. They're evenly spaced apart. I multiply that friendly number times itself, and I multiply that distance up by itself, and I subtract. And that's something, again, you can do in your head. When I see that, I think, okay, 20 times 20, take away 9. And you'll get there, and you'll get there too, as long as you keep practicing it. So, with all of that said, I think that's where we're going to close it out for today. As always, I hope gave you some interesting things to think about. I hope that you get more interested about Mathnasium as we go on. Really appreciate you all joining me today and just talking about mental math and just making stuff fun. So I will be back tomorrow to do some more mental math stuff. We'll look at some different things, stuff that we hadn't quite looked at today, and just look at some different things. And maybe some fraction stuff and some other multiplication related things that are a little bit different than what we talked about today. So I hope you join me again tomorrow. I appreciate my audience, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you back here at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Bye now.
It's afternoons that seem to be the most hectic for us, so it was much more convenient when we found Mathnasium at home.
All right, so how do we do half of 5? I think one of the best things about at home is that it really feels like you're almost at home with the student in their house teaching them.
I'm in my comfort zone.
You can just ask for help and the instructor will come right to you.
With Mathnasium at home, I know that they're getting the help that they need.
Awesome, great job.
Mathnasium, changing lives through math.